And the way we do this, for instance, a time bomb. Let's just show this. A time bomb is where you set up that a certain amount of time after a certain amount of time will pass, something dreadful will happen. All right? The television show 24 is a great example of this. The entire television show is built around a time bomb concept. We have 24 hours of watching the show until the ending has to be here. In a book, the pages of the book are a natural time bomb, which is an advantage that we have with novels. It works in film too, but they don't always know exactly how long the film's going to be, and so but we have a natural, this many pages are left, sort of time bomb. But one way to get a sense of progression is to tell people we have this many days left. Anyone seen a book where they do this? Maybe any examples?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
No,
you've read it?
Yeah.
I did write a book which is unpublished in which I said, our space station is going to explode after this amount of time, and I actually put a literal time bomb in.
It's not as...
No, don't worry about it. We're running out of time, so I'm sure you can think of examples of this. This is just one way of giving a sense of progression, and we keep reminding the reader, we have this much time left. We have this much time left. We have this much time left. This one's used much more often in things like thrillers. We have this much time left until the evil Nazi clones living under the polar ice caps will cause the oceans to evaporate. What's that? Yeah, I give that one to Clive Cussler. I'm sure he'll be able to write that. All right, so the time bomb. What it does is it achieves a sense of progress. Every time you mention we have this much time left, no matter how things are going in the book, it raises the tension, and it allows us to say, oh, okay, we've got this. The same thing happens in travel books and travel logs. And it's one of the reasons why you see maps a lot in fantasy novels. I don't know if this is conscious or unconscious, but if you say, we have to get to Tar-Valon, and we are right here, and the reader can follow along on the map, then you've suddenly got a travel log, a sense of progression. Now, the thing is, they don't get to Tar-Valon, so maybe that's not a great example. But David Eddings made an entire career out of this type of sense of progression. His books, part of the reason they were so compelling to read, which many of us, I probably read them when we were younger, one of the reasons that they were so compelling is he would say, we are chasing the bad guy to this city, and here's a map to show where we have to go. And then they would have adventures along the way, and it wouldn't matter that a lot of the storytelling in his books were vignettes that didn't have to do as much with the main plot, because we could see that we were moving on the main plot. This is particularly useful if you want to have a series of vignettes, but yet leave a dominating, overpowering sense of plot progression. You don't have to use one of these. A sense of progression can be achieved just as easily by setting up a mystery and finding the clues. The Inuyasha Final Fantasy style is to set up a number of goals and then take them off the list one at a time. I say this because Inuyasha is about they split the shard, this crystal into a certain number of shards, and they're chasing them down, and every episode they find one. That sort of thing. Or, the video game plot where it's like, we need to capture these 7 mystical gems, and when we have them, we can fight the bad guy, and it makes a natural sense of progression for your game because you're slowly achieving those. Be careful on this one to not make it feel like a video game. No, really, that can be a danger. You don't want to say, but you can say, we need to do these sorts of things. And as they're slowly achieved, then we get a natural sense of progression. In Mistborn, I gave a little tiny one with this by setting up a plot cycle where I said Vin is going to train with each of the major members of the thieving crew to learn how to become a better allomancer, learning their own things. And so we have conversations with her and with Breeze and with Ham, where she goes and she meets with Marsh. She meets with each of them and talks about their magic system and with Spook. And you can just kind of tick them off the list, and it gives just a natural, readers probably aren't even thinking about this, but it gives a natural sense of progression that we are moving toward an ending. In Mistborn, I also do it by setting up, here are the goals that the thieving team is going to achieve, and in the scenes you can see them working on those different goals and getting closer and closer on them. That doesn't mean that, you don't want things to go wrong. You do want things to go wrong. But sense of progression, really will help you with your books. If you're having trouble with just meandering along, or you're having trouble with your plotting, making it feel compelling, think about putting in something like one of these to give a sense of progression. I did this intentionally in the third Mistborn novel, which I have mentioned before, that Sazed's plot for the third Mistborn novel was problematic to me. I had trouble writing it. This is a character who has just lost someone dear to him, who had been a religious character. In fact, he's something of a missionary, but for all religions. He collects all religions and then pitches to people the right religion that he thinks fits them, which is a really weird concept, I know, but it works very well for his character. But he has now lost faith that there is even any sort of deity or anything like that. And so he's depressed for most of the book, which was really boring for me to read as a writer. And I had a real problem making his plot work. Eventually I said, I need to set up something that he can progress through, so that him as a character, so that the reader gets the sense. And I just added on top of it, he collected all these religions. He was going to go one by one and try and prove them right or wrong till he found the right religion. And I set up how many there were, and I had him go through them. And that little change by saying, he's going to look at each one of these religions and eliminate them as true, and by the end, therefore, he will know that none of the religions are true, and yes, indeed, he's been living a lie. It's a little thing, it's kind of depressing, but he's a depressed character. But him doing something and moving slowly through this with a set number of pages suddenly gave him it reworked the entire story for him with that little subtle change, and suddenly there was a sense of progression to what he was doing, and you could retain hope because maybe he'll find something true in one of these, and we don't have him completely despairing until he gets to the end of those, if indeed he gets to the end of those, doesn't find what he's looking for. So do you see how that can work as a subplot, as a way of approaching this to make the plot move forward? So there, I've talked a lot about plot. I've been a little bit here and a little bit there. That gives you an overview. This is one of those things like, all three of these groupings are going to take years of practice to master, and I can't give you all the tools that you'll need. I'm just trying to throw a bucket of tools at you and see which ones you snatch from the air and try out on your own writing and see if they help you. Let's do some Q&A. What are you guys curious about knowing from me about writing? Nothing at all. Okay, John.
Is it okay to like usually what I do is I just write scenes from the middle of the book, not really.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't do that, but Robert Jordan did, and so if Robert Jordan did it, it's probably okay. But here's a clue. Anytime you say "Is it okay?" I have almost never been answered no to that question. Because there are no right ways to do this. It's okay to do anything. Now, doing it consciously rather than unconsciously tends to be better, or at least knowing what you're doing and figuring out your own process. But it's okay to do anything. You can write your books in backward. Don't write it to the words backward, but you know what I mean. You can write the scenes backward. Whatever makes you write fiction that you like is the right tool to use.
I have a character that I feel like she's growing too quickly.
Okay.
Her character growth happening too quickly now that I go back and look at it. What's a good way to
add in a fail cycle. Add in something going wrong that kind of makes her take 2 steps backward when she's just taken 3 forward. Probably is the best way that I would suggest. Whatever it is she's working on, have her have a relapse for a good reason. This is the thing where the person who's been the alcoholic who's kicked the drinking habit suddenly finds out that his grandmother has died, and has one night where she's like, I can't take this, and regresses, and things go wrong again. That sort of thing, something like that. That one's a pretty obvious example. But that's what I would suggest. Let alpha readers read it and see what they think. If they don't say she's progressing too fast, she may not be.
Characters and then getting to a setting and a plot for these. I mean, if you start with one place, how do you get the other two kind of incorporated?
It's a good question. I would suggest, this wasn't a character thing, so I don't have a lot of time to talk on it, but I would suggest looking for points of conflict in your character's personality, things that are internal conflicts or external conflicts for them. If you've only got the character and not the plot or the setting, so they're going to be internal conflicts, and then find ways that those internal conflicts can be made worse by their environment. If you've got someone, just tell me an internal conflict that the character could have. Throw one out at me. Anybody?
Cognitive dissonance, like their actions aren't fitting their beliefs.
Okay, their actions don't finish, they're a hypocrite. All right, so you've got a character who's hypocritical, and then create a plot where they are going to be put on the spot for that. So, for instance, they're a hypocrite, but let's say that they're in a religious thing. They're a hypocrite, but they're a very lowly priest or priestess in this religion. But something then happens where they get promoted to the forefront, and they're going to be in the front of everybody, and it's a national crisis of some sort, where either they're going to have to learn to live their religion, or they're going to have to realize, oh, this isn't really true. And so therefore they're going to have to change their belief system. Whatever their growth cycle is, you can then that case build up a religion in which you can see both sides of it. I always say stay away from straw men. Don't build things so that the only one belief system could possibly be true. And try to show both sides, but show something where the character can grow in the way you want, where if they don't, it's going to be very problematic for the entire world or for people they care about, or if it's epic fantasy, it's the kingdoms of the world. If it's not, then it's the people that they love, and both can work just fine. But if they don't grow, that's going to be in trouble. Set up a plot where that is central to it, and put their conflict at the middle of the story, would be my suggestion. If you're trying to build a magic system, if you come up with a character and then come up with a magic system where that character's flaw prohibits them from excelling in the magic system, you can overlap those two things on top of one another pretty well. A fear of heights mixed with a magic system about flying would be a very simple example. You probably want to go a little bit deeper than that, but that sort of thing. You can springboard a character into setting and plot that way by looking for those points of conflict. Okay.
One of my characters goes through a lot of pretty painful things, and she struggles the whole entire time. And I'm trying to figure out a way to have her not be miserable from all of these struggles. I want to inspire happiness.
Okay. Well, not knowing the story, I can give you just a few things you could try. None of these are going to be maybe the perfect thing, but there are a lot of books about and stories about people in terrible situations that retain hope. The Shawshank Redemption is a great example of that, where everything's pretty terrible. And in that story, you retain a ray of light by showing a sense of progression. So while terrible things are happening, we get a feeling that something is coming, that we're moving toward something, even if we don't know quite what it is. We've been promised he's going to escape. That's the promise for us. And so, though the experiences are terrible in prison, we see little steps that could be forward. And so, things are going wrong here, show us the sense of progression over here would be one way to do it. Another way to do it is to take more of an Indiana Jones style. The world goes wrong for this person. This is actually more like the Dresden Files method. Harry Dresden has a rough time in those books. He can't turn the corner without being accidentally mugged or having a demon rip out of the wall and try and eat him and stuff. But the way that those work is by he created a character who is just struggling to do good and is occasionally able to achieve it. And because he's occasionally able to achieve good things, he's able to remain an upbeat, positive character. You add on top of that a passion for something, a passion for life, a passion for what they're doing. Making a character passionate can overcome a lot of these things. Or you can give them someone that they love, that they are protecting, and even though everything's going wrong for this character, they're achieving this one thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You overlap their desires. Characters are about what they want and why they can't have it, and what they're able to achieve. If their true passion is doing this one thing and everything else goes wrong, then we're going to still love that character and understand why they're upbeat.